Bienvenidos. Welcome to the first Hispanic Heritage Month podcast series at Seton University. I am your host, Jorge Rivera. Over the course of this month, I will have the exciting opportunity to be speaking with several alumni of Seton University as they share their personal stories. This year's theme, Navigating Latinidad, will explore what it means to identify as Hispanic or Latino, Latina, Latinx, and how that identity takes form in American society. Today's guest is a Latina professional who recently earned her PhD in higher education leadership, management, and policy from Seton University. She is currently an assistant dean at a local Hispanic serving institution. Let's welcome Dr. Lacagnino. Welcome to our podcast. I am super happy to have you here joining us today. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me here today. I'm really excited about our conversation.
Well, I'm excited too, Dr. Lacagnino. And I will begin with your upbringing. I think everyone's upbringing is important. So let's start with that. And tell us, how was it for you being raised in a Latina household? How did that shape you into the person that you are today?
Well, for me, the answer is pretty simple. What really shaped me as a Latina was my family. Mm-hmm. So I came here to the United States when I was 5 years old. I was born in Italy. I grew up in a bicultural home. My mother is Puerto Rican and my father is Italian. And, ever since I can remember as a child to now, my whole life has been surrounded by my family and really our love for one another. So for us growing up, Sundays were really special in my household. There was a time when both of my families came together and we would just spend the day with each other. I had my grandparents there and they would always share stories with my sister and I. And just growing up, those are some of the memories that I hold close to me because they taught me many lessons through their stories. They've overcame many obstacles. And so one being, they really emphasized the importance of education. So for me, I always knew early on that I had a great sense of responsibility to pursue a higher education, not only for myself, but I guess to thank them for all the struggles that they've gone through and overcame. And it was something that they didn't have access to. So I really wanted to do that for them as well. And the other thing for me is really that shaped me as a Latina are the strong women in my life. So my grandmothers are no longer with me, but they're always always are with me. And my mother is just such a strong presence in my life. So they really taught me the importance of not giving up on my goals and to always put my family first. So for me, those are two strong values that I've always been brought up with. And without my family, I know I wouldn't be the Latina that I am today.
Dr. Lacagnino, you stated family first, and that is so true, especially in today's society where we really need to have that emphasis on family first more than ever because of the many distractions and many obstacles that people encounter in their lives. And I just appreciate the fact that your grandparents and your parents played such a role models, if you will, in shaping you in how you are today. So I ask you, what obstacles did you overcome and have to overcome to pursue the profession that you're in today?
There were definitely a few obstacles that came along the way in my professional career, but there's one that really stands out strong to me. Since I've pursued my career in higher education, I never had a Latina in a position of influence where I worked. And that really impacted me because I didn't really have anyone that I could ask for career advice or guidance in my workplace. And so everything that I accomplished and the barriers that I overcame in the workplace were due to my own tenacity and grit. And really those two values and characteristics that were taught by my family, my mother, my grandparents, and my father. And this is like really the first obstacle that I've overcome and really influenced the work that I wanted to do in higher education. So this really led me to I worked on developing Title V programs aimed at improving student success and expanding educational opportunities for Latinx and other underserved students. I've always been student-centered, so whenever I've been in a position I've always advocated for policies that remove barriers to student success, especially for students of color. However, Jorge, I really realized quickly that in order for me to have more of an impact, I needed to be able to serve in a position that allowed me to have more of a leadership role in making decisions that could remove these barriers for students. And so like most of us do, I started to explore what qualifications were needed for these executive role positions in higher education. And I learned that you needed to earn a PhD to even be considered for these positions. And this is one of the main reasons that you don't see many Latinas in executive level positions in higher education. It just comes down to an access and equity issue. It's not only financially, but it's also responsibilities that we have at home for our families. One of the biggest strengths of our culture, but also something that makes it difficult for us to put something like an advanced degree before our other responsibilities that we have. And just to put some more context to me, I'm always like to look at research and numbers. And the US Census Bureau always releases statistics on educational attainment. So their latest in 2018, they published the statistics of the PhDs that were conferred in the United States. So of all the PhDs that were conferred in the United States in 2018, only 85 were conferred to Latinas, compared to almost 1,300 white women and 187 Black women. And then when we look at this disparity is even greater when we start looking and comparing by gender. And so we see then again, one of the main reasons why we don't see many Latinas in higher education executive roles. So, even though there were many obstacles along the way, for me, I did pursue my PhD and I did successfully earn it in 2019 from Seton Hall University. And I was proud to be one of the Latinas that crossed the stage. However, there weren't many. I think there were maybe 2. And so I'm hoping that barrier can continue to be broken through. I'm really thankful for my family's support while they couldn't help me, with the schoolwork or even understood what entailed to do to really carry through and to finish the degree. They were always there for me. And then the other thing that always pushed me along, even when it got really difficult, was all the students that I thought of that I was doing this for. And so I knew that by finishing, I could open more doors for them. And I also wanted them to understand that there was no obstacle too big for them to overcome.
Dr. Lacagnino, in mentioning and talking about the obstacles that you overcame, it allows us to get a picture, right, if you will, get a picture of the struggles that you had to face. And through those struggles, how you were able to look at education as a possible answer. Even talking about that number, 85 Latinas receiving PhDs or earning their PhD. I mean, that's a staggering number, very low number. And so it's very impressive to be able to listen to your story because you're part of that. You're one of those individuals that was able to overcome. And so I ask you because, you had your parents, your grandparents, they provided advice. So perhaps now you can provide some great advice for the next generation, especially navigating latinidad in today's current climate. What advice would you give them?
I would definitely tell them, don't be afraid to ask for help. So it's just as I was talking about my own obstacles, this is one of those lessons that I wished I learned sooner. So during my PhD, I definitely struggled with this simple piece of advice. I think part of it as a Latina, you're taught to help others. For me, I always did that because I wanted to help others succeed. So I would always put their needs before mine, and sometimes at the expense of myself. And I also felt that it would be burdening maybe someone else by me asking them for help. But this really all changed in my mind. I did a complete 360 one day when I went to see my dissertation advisor. And it was just shortly after my grandmother passed away. So she knew that I was struggling with making some progress in my dissertation proposal. And she sat down with me. And she came from a culture where your elders come first. So she understood where I came from. She also understood the disease that my grandmother passed away from. Her grandmother went through the same thing with dementia. So we had that in common. And she told me that I was pursuing something that most people don't get to do, and most people don't do because it is so challenging. And so that no one, including her, was able to achieve that goal without asking for help. And so I had to really make the choice and the commitment that day that I was going to allow myself to receive help. And so that really stuck with me because I realized then if I can't help others and be good for others, if I don't accept that same help myself, and I have to be a role model in that way. And I couldn't be a help to other students unless I was in a position where I did earn my PhD and can provide more to students. So I just want to leave the students with that simple piece of advice. Remember that you are not alone, that you have a network of support around you. None of us, including myself, have on our journey, were ever able to accomplish our goals without the help of someone that came before us. So they guide us to provide us with these opportunities so that we can make a difference. So ask for help. And I know that you're going to accomplish great things. And if there's any administrators out there listening to this podcast right now, I also ask you to reach out to students and do that same thing that my advisor did for me. Because there are students, especially students of color, that it is not always easy for them to ask for help. So we have to be the ones to also reach out to them and guide them.
You know, the word help, such a simple word, but such a strong, powerful one when used correctly. And I'll tell you, Dr. Lacagnino, we've been so fortunate to be able to listen to your story, to your advice. I'm sure that my audience feels the same way. Before I let you go, what does the future hold for Dr. Lacagnino?
Well, I definitely would like to explore more research. So I just finished my degree last year. I would like to publish, so I would like to work on expanding some of my research. I focused on Latinx students in higher education, and I would like to explore that a little bit more, including education policy, which is something that I've always been passionate about. And then in addition, being an administrator in higher education, I want to continue to move up and serve in roles where I can make an influence and ensure that all students have the ability to have access to an equitable education. So I definitely would like to see myself in the next years moving up in a higher level position. And, you know, I've always been passionate about Hispanic serving institutions. It's something that is near and dear to my heart. So that's definitely something that I would also like to continue working in that environment.
Wow. Dr. Lacagnino, thank you so much for your leadership. Thank you for today's advice. And most importantly, thank you for your voice. Your voice is what's allowing our students, those in your institution, and perhaps those listening to today's podcast, to see hope and to understand that they too can overcome their obstacles. So I want to say thank you. I hope that you had fun. Yes?
Yes, it was great. Thank you for having me here today.
Well, thank you so much. And for the rest of you out there, thank you for listening. Until next time, hasta luego.